We are going to start by discussing system expansions. In some cases, customers may need to add to their Illinois Shines contracted project if their energy usage goes up or changes. In these cases, the customer could add a new addition to a pre-existing Illinois Shines contracted project through an expansion. An expansion is a system addition to an already Illinois Shines contracted project. In line with the Illinois Shines project limit, expansions are only compensated up to the maximum 5 megawatt total size limit when added to the original system. Additionally, an expansion must have the same interconnection point as the original system. That's a key characteristic of an expansion. Alternatively, let's look at co-located systems. Co-location occurs when there is more than one unique system enrolled in the Illinois Shines program at a single location that belongs to the same entity or its affiliates. The systems would be considered co-located. For example, these two individual 100 kilowatt systems located at a single location would be considered a 200 kilowatt co-located system in the eyes of the program. The purpose of co-located system is so that gaming is not possible in that larger projects could be structured to maximize income from incentives by dividing up a larger project into multiple smaller projects that individually would qualify for higher rec incentives. In line with the Illinois Shines project limit, co-located projects cannot exceed 5 megawatts. Alternatively to system expansions, co-located projects would have separate interconnection points, so each system functions independent of each other. This is a key characteristic of co-location. There are a few more characteristics of expansions and co-locations to note. On the left-hand side are characteristics of a system expansion, and on the right-hand side are characteristics of co-located systems. Starting with expansions, which again is a new addition added to a pre-existing Illinois Shines contracted project. The rec price of the expansion system is based on the combined size of the original system plus the expansion. The expansion price will be adjusted to account for the current block price at the size of the combined system minus the price paid to the original system. It's important to note that an expansion will not be Part 1 verified until the original system is Part 2 verified first. Finally, a key characteristic of expansions is that the expansion must be independently metered, meeting and has an independent production meter, with a separate GATS or MRETS ID, must be enrolled in net metering with the utility, if applicable, and will be issued a new contract or product order independent from that of the original system. Now, looking at co-location characteristics on the right-hand side, which again is more than one Illinois Shines project at a single location that belongs to the same entity or its affiliates. The rec price for systems determined to be co-located will be based on the size category for the total size of the co-located projects by that single entity or its affiliates. If co-located projects are submitted at different times, the rec price that the co-located systems will receive is the rec price available for the summed system time at the time of the second project's application. A price reduction will be applied to the second project, and the first project will continue to receive standard full rec pricing, so that total of the two systems equals the co-located system pricing amount. We're now going to talk a little bit more about co-location specific to distributed generation projects, specifically in regards to parcels. Co-location in distributed generation projects refers to the placement of multiple projects developed by a single entity or affiliated entities on a single parcel of land. It's also important to note that to prevent gaming, a parcel cannot have been divided into multiple parcels in the 2 years prior to the project's application to the program. Additionally, The agency has the authority to determine whether distributed generation systems spanning multiple adjacent parcels that serve affiliated customers can be considered co-located. For instance, if a single retail customer is trying to establish separate utility accounts for a facility that crosses multiple parcels, this would likely be recognized as co-located. We have an example on this slide where entity A and their affiliated entities A1, A2, and A3 have DG systems located on the same parcel. These systems would be considered co-located. Systems are considered to be co-located unless systems are confirmed to be developed by unaffiliated entities or unless retail electric account ownership is confirmed to be unaffiliated and serves distinct electrical loads. More information on the definition of affiliated can be found in the program guidebook. Similar to distributed generation projects, community solar projects developed by affiliated entities are co-located if they are located on a single parcel, as demonstrated in the top figure. However, community solar projects sited on adjacent parcels will also be considered co-located unless systems are confirmed to be developed by unaffiliated entities. Again, a parcel cannot have been divided into multiple parcels in the 2 years prior to the project's application to the program. There is also a specific co-location consideration for rooftop community solar projects, where projects sited on separate rooftops or structures on adjacent parcels will not be considered co-located, as demonstrated by the figure on the left. They would only be considered co-located if they are located on the same building or structure and span multiple parcels. Multiple community solar projects sited on distinct structures located on a single parcel will still be considered co-located, as demonstrated by the figure on the right. We are now going to move away from system expansions and co-location to talk about resizing. The program recognizes that changes may happen during the development process, which is typically between the Part 1 application, when the proposed nameplate capacity is submitted, and the Part 2 application, when the actual nameplate capacity is submitted. Some resizing changes are permitted during that time, while some resizing changes would lead to a removal of the project from the REC contract and the need to reapply to the program. Any change in nameplate capacity between the Part 1 and Part 2 application that exceeds 5 kilowatts or 25% of the nameplate capacity, whichever of the two is larger, would be removed from the contract and would need to reapply. For example, if a 10 kilowatt system changed by 6 kilowatts, then that would exceed the 5 kilowatt maximum change. But if a 100 kilowatt system changed by 30 kilowatts, that would exceed the 25% maximum change. So it's whichever is the larger of the two. On the screen are a few scenarios of what happens if actual nameplate capacity submitted in the Part 2 application is different than the proposed nameplate capacity in the Part 1 application. The first two scenarios, which are in blue, are if a change happens within the 5 kilowatt or 25% threshold and the size category does not change. That is acceptable with no major impacts. The second two scenarios, which are in green, are if a change happens within the 5 kilowatt or 25% threshold and the size category does change. That is still acceptable, just the REC price may be adjusted to reflect the new size category. I say it may be adjusted because the project would not benefit from higher REC price if the new size category has higher REC prices. It is important to note that a project's REC payment is based on the lesser of the REC price and estimated production in the Part 1 and Part 2 of the applications. The reason for this is that a system that is built smaller than planned will not benefit from excess REC payments that the final system cannot support as a result of its decreased production estimate. On the opposite side, if a project's final size is larger than the planned size, An increase in the rec payment could present unexpected budget management challenges. The final two scenarios, which are in gray, are if the size change exceeds the 5 kilowatt or 25% threshold. In these scenarios, the project will be removed from the rec contract and will need to reapply. Any changes to a project after Part 2 is verified would need to be submitted as an expansion or could constitute a violation of the rec contract.